Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad, and a very warm welcome to Thursday's edition of the Doctor Who Daily. On today's show, first of all, we're going to celebrate David Tennant's incredible Doctor. Then we're going to talk about why and how they're erasing Jodie Whittaker's 13th Doctor. David Tennant's portrayal as the Doctor is the first time and only time in Doctor Who history where someone is using a different accent, different body movement that's not their own. If you look at every single other version of the Doctor, most of it, they're just playing themselves. Of course, they're acting, reacting to other actors and, portraying those emotions as actors brilliantly do. But ultimately, it's hard enough to reach your marks and, be a convincing Doctor, let alone do what David Tennant did, which is different accent, different body shape, different characterization. The Doctor is nothing like David Tennant. And, the audience are not stupid. This is why he's beloved. They can see the effort, and the hard work he's put into his version of the Doctor. This is not about putting down other people who don't use accents and are literally just playing a version of themselves. Let's be honest about it, because I celebrate every single one of these Doctors, these actors who have played the Doctor. But what David Tennant did was incredibly special. Now let's get into what kind of Doctor David Tennant was. Well, it's kind of interesting with David Tennant's Doctor because Christopher Eccleston's Doctor reached a peaceful evolution after the Time War and Rose helping him to come to terms with that. Now, actually, and I believe Russell T Davies did this very purposely, he kind of devolves the Doctor instead of evolves the Doctor. It's interesting. As David Tennant goes on and on in his iteration, he becomes more vain and more arrogant. We see what happens in the waters of Mars because he can't handle being on his own. He can't handle the loss of Donna and Rose and everybody else that he's travelled with. It's too much for him. And ultimately, when he's in the TARDIS on his own in the end of time, as he's about to regenerate, he says, I don't want to go. But let's take it back before his other regeneration, in Journey's End, when they all think he's going to regenerate. He uses the hand to stay as himself. What does he say? Why would I want to change? Look at me. So he's becoming so arrogant and so sure of himself. This is a Doctor who absolutely loves himself and will do anything not to change. And when you don't want to evolve in life, it can bring in insanity and, mental health problems as well. So this Doctor is slowly losing the plot. And as I say, Russell T Davies did this on purpose. Because this is what I keep on saying in comparison to Jodie's Doctor. Jodie's Doctor had no character flaws, but the Doctor has always been a flawed character. That's what's made them interesting for so many years. And David's Doctor is a flawed Doctor. Some people see him as this jovial, confident, happy-go-lucky Doctor, but this may be the darkest Doctor of all, and I've discussed this before, but it is a really interesting take on this Doctor. But I do find it utterly impressive how this actor decided, and I don't know if this was Russell too, or if this was David on his own, or if they worked on this together. This incarnation of the Doctor, the 10th Doctor, is a total made-up character. That means David can't home it in. He can't be lazy one day. The accent has to be there, the body language, the way he moves his face, everything is an act. This, my friends, is what acting is all about. And it's not a popular thing these days to celebrate acting. We had Jodie Whittaker saying she was never going to lose her accent because she's proud of where she comes from. Too right, too. I'm glad she's proud of where she comes from. It doesn't mean you can't create a character or a caricature, right? But, this was another way of saying I can't be bothered to put on another accent. So she just had to be herself for 3 seasons. Lucky her. Where David Tennant actually decided to do the work, and it shows. And this is why he's one of the best Doctors of all time. There are many 13th Doctor fans who believe the BBC are trying to erase the 13th Doctor from the memory. And I agree with you. They are. They are. I'm not necessarily a 13th Doctor fan, but I love all the Doctors, right? And I celebrate them all. I certainly don't hate anyone who's played the Doctor. That would be absolutely illogical. But yes, for business reasons and business purposes, they are trying to erase that version of the Doctor for now. Or they're trying to put her, you know, kind of in the distance. And it's very similar with Sylvester McCoy's Doctor, Colin Baker's Doctor. They weren't really the greatest incarnations of the Doctor, although they do have their fans, and I respect their fans. They weren't my cup of tea. Once Peter Davison left the role, I stopped watching until Doctor Who the movie. I'm going to be honest about that. I'm going to be totally transparent about that. So yes, they are attempting to erase Jodie. This is the real reason David Tennant isn't wearing Jodie Whittaker's costume. And the stuff that Russell said was just an excuse. And he obviously felt he needed to say something. So he came, you know, he tried to sound like he was protecting her costume, he was protecting her Doctor. No. If you like her Doctor, if you are protecting her Doctor, David wears that costume. But they don't want David Tennant or Ncuti Gatwa running around in Jodie's costume, because they want you to forget about that Doctor, because they have the stats of Doctor Who since Russell left the first time. Well, I've seen the stats as well. And I can tell you that this show has been declining in the ratings, as you all know, because they're made public, and the profits and the DVD and Blu-ray sales, the T-shirts, the merch and everything since Russell T Davies left the first time. Why is that? Well, we've discussed this briefly on this channel before. Russell T Davies wrote a Doctor with nuance, with characters. Everything was really done in a great way. But it was highly entertaining, and everything that was done in mind of the business. Russell T Davies is the first person to make Doctor Who a viable business on this level. I know people always bought Doctor Who merch, but not on the level. You know, this show became a mainstream show. That's what Russell did. It was great. It had depth. He did everything right, but he also made it a very successful business. When Moffat and Chibnall came in, they didn't care about the business. They were going to do whatever the hell they wanted with this universe as writers and visionaries, and that's the difference. And it declined in the ratings, and it declined in profits. The reason RTD's back is to bring it back to what it was when he left it. And this is why David Tennant is back as well. And as a business, you don't advertise an iteration of your brand that didn't really work. And ultimately, Jodie Whittaker, the 13th Doctor, has many, many fans, and that's a good thing. And I celebrate her era, Chris's era, and the fact that you celebrate her era, I celebrate you. Let's just clear that throat. But yeah, I celebrate you. So I'm not here to put you down, but I'm telling you clearly that your suspicions are right, that they are attempting to erase her Doctor, because for now, she is bad for business. That's a fact. Whether you love her or hate her or loathe her or whatever, you know, she's bad for business. That's why David really isn't wearing her costume. And these are the facts. Now, of course, I could end up having egg on my face, and Ncuti Gatwa's Doctor could end up wearing her costume. Who knows? Who knows what's going on? I mean, that would be the right and proper thing to do, considering he's meant to be the next full-time Doctor, and that may be the case. And if that's the case, that's great, because it's a tradition. It's a great tradition. You know, this is the same person. When they regenerate, they're wearing the previous incarnation's clothes, and that's an important tradition. So for all we know, Ncuti could be wearing her costume, although we did see a clip of him wearing something else, which is also interesting, but that could be later on, or I don't know. Who knows what's going on? More than likely, Ncuti isn't going to be wearing Jodie's costume, and this is because they want you to forget about the Whittaker and Chibnall era as soon as possible, because it isn't good for business. But we know there's people out there already predicting doom and gloom for Doctor Who. That it will fail, that Disney will drop it from Disney Plus, blah, blah, blah. The reason they're saying Doctor Who is going to fail is because they want it to fail. Even though they claim they're Doctor Who fans, they wanted Jodie and Chris's iteration to fail because Jodie was a woman. The difference is they were proud to say that Doctor Who should be a man. Not my opinion, theirs, by the way, because the Doctor can regenerate into anyone or anything, as we damn well know. So they were happy to say it's going to fail, Doctor Who should be a man. But they are very angry. These people predicting doom and gloom and failure for Doctor Who are upset because the Doctor is now a person of colour. We have the first black male Doctor, and they are angry about it. The difference is you can get away with saying we're not get away with, but there's less kind of, you know, you're not going to get targeted as much if you say the Doctor should be a man and not a woman. But when you're angry about the colour of the new Doctor's skin, you can't exactly come out and say it, although some fools do, and of course that they will face those consequences. Now, personally, I don't understand how you can be upset about the Doctor being a black man, black woman, or a woman in general. We know how the concept of this show works. But just because you want something to fail, it doesn't mean it is. Russell T Davies is a genius. You know, you people predicting failure, you saw what he did the first time around. Why don't you think he's capable of that all over again? I mean, we are approaching the 26-year cycle that ended the previous incarnation of Doctor Who, the classic series. We're now on 17 years since the revival started in 2005. So ultimately, we are probably heading for Doctor Who to be rested eventually, and I would like it to finish off with a Russell T Davies era, because there does seem to be this rule that nobody outside of the Russell T Davies gang, you know, these Doctor Who fans who are actually talented people as well, can work on this show. We've had Russell T Davies, Stephen Moffat, Chris Chibnall, who all worked on the original RTD era, and now Russell's there again. I mean, what happens next? Moffat comes back. It does seem like a closed-knit group of people are only allowed to run Doctor Who. I agree with this, but I also don't agree with this, because it doesn't allow Doctor Who to ever expand. It's because it's very difficult to run a show like Doctor Who. You do really need to understand the show and the fandom to be involved in it. It's very special. I think in the end you do need to evolve a property, but because it's such a unique concept about this time-traveling alien in a phone box traveling around time and space, you do have to wrap your head around it, that you're going to different places every week, and it can't be too Americanized either, as they try to do with Torchwood Miracle Day, and that's on them. But ultimately, yeah, I think we are heading kind of to a time where Doctor Who will be rested, but it's not that time yet. They're going to give it another go. I think it's always hard with this concept to get used to a new companion, a new Doctor. And I'm not one of those YouTubers that's going to say to you, just celebrate the new Doctor and forget about the past Doctor. It's not that easy. Of course it's not. There's a mourning process. For me, there was a mourning process for Christopher Eccleston's Doctor. Even though I love David as the Doctor, you've heard me like ooze about him. But it took me to Last of the Time Lords to accept David Tennant as my Doctor. And then Matt Smith, again, it took me till The Snowmen to actually embrace his Doctor. And even though I love Peter Capaldi, he never became my Doctor. Jodie Whittaker never became my Doctor. Sylvester McCoy never became my Doctor. The same with Colin Baker. My first Doctor was Peter Davison. And although I've watched certain episodes prior to Davison, I haven't really deeply kind of taken a deep dive into Doctor Who prior to Peter Davison. That's on me, that's my loss. Of course, I have seen An Unearthly Child and a few others, few episodes, but really my knowledge, even the Peter Davison stuff, I don't really remember it deeply because I just watched it as a kid. But the movie and the revival, I know so well. And I'm so grateful for Classic Who and for the revival as well. But everything has its sell-by date. But I think Russell T Davies is a genius, as I keep on saying, and I believe Doctor Who will succeed because I think there's definitely still an audience there ready to consume more Doctor Who. And I can tell you something, as I continue my Doctor Who RTD era rewatch, and I'm going to watch it straight through to the Power of the Doctor. I'm enjoying doing that, watching Torchwood Declassified, watching Doctor Who Confidential. It's just wonderful. It's a wonderful world, and I'm so grateful for it. I'm grateful for Russell T Davies, especially what he did was sensational, but I'm grateful for Chris Chibnall and Stephen Moffat and everybody else who's been involved with Doctor Who. This has been Thursday's edition of the Doctor Who Daily, here with me, Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss this beautiful perfection, and I'll see you again in the next video. Until I see you again, goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen.